But William Pitt said of Wilberforce that he had the greatest natural eloquence of anyone he had ever heard. So Wilberforce stood poised to do great things for God's kingdom. And Wilberforce himself said, quote, "My walk is a public one. My business is in the world, and I must mix in the assemblies of men or quit the part which Providence seems to have assigned me." In other words, I'm a statesman, and I mix with a lot of people who are not very holy, but God has called me to do that and to make a difference for him. So he was part of the Clapham sect. He was the leader, and everyone in the group understood themselves as having a job. So his job was to represent God's kingdom in the House of Commons, and another person's job was to represent them with bankers, and another person's job was to represent them in this committee that he served on, or she did this, or whatever. And so everyone had their job and their role to play. And Wilberforce's biographer, Reginald Coupland, said, "There has never been anything like it since in British public life." So go back to the 1800s. Nothing like this has come about since. They took up many causes for the gospel. Their biggest one was the abolition of the slave trade. And this is what Wilberforce is famous for. So at this time, people were literally, British and otherwise, going and capturing Africans, like just taking them away from their families, from their jobs, from their lives, and packing them like sardines into the slave ships, which I know all of you know about, and shipping them to various places to serve as slaves. This got so bad that in 1770, 100,000 slaves were shipped in that year, and half of them were shipped by the British. So the Clapham sect realized, okay, something has got to be done about this. What can we do? So what's your job? Well, Wilberforce, you're in the House of Commons, so let's try to do something about this. So in 1789, Wilberforce gave his first speech in the House of Commons, and he was largely dismissed because it was economical to have slaves. How are you supposed to get rid of this? It's going well for us. Look at our empire. And the British Empire was a huge deal at that time. And someone even commented about Wilberforce. He was a really short guy. He said, "Well, the shrimp has become a whale." And so they really kind of dismissed him. So Wilberforce needed to keep working at this, and so he had to rely on other people within the Clapham sect who their job would be, okay, I need information about how this works. And so he had a former slave who had written a book about his experience. He had all these people who were able to give him reliable information. And so he was able to go before Parliament and give them this information about the horrible things that they were doing, that they were, think about some of the bad issues in the world today. Like a lot of people are just sort of able to shut those out of their mind. Well, he just sort of presented it in a way that they couldn't ignore. And that's how he was able to influence them. I said his first speech was in 1789. Anyone want to know how long it took for him to actually win the victory in the abolition of the slave trade? Guess a number of years.
I think it was 1830.
Before slavery was outlawed, it was 1833, yes. So 1807 was the slave trade was done away with, not slavery itself, but the slave trade. So better part of 18 years he was working for this. So they had a meeting in the House of Commons, and one person, as they were passing this, one person contrasted Wilberforce with Napoleon. He said, Napoleon is considered a great man because he conquered people. Wilberforce is a great man because he helped save people. And Wilberforce, this actually happened, he sat down, everyone applauded him, which you don't do in the House of Commons. He sat down with his head in his hands and just wept.